So this week's speech is very different in that it's a historic speech. It'll feel different, it'll sound different to you, and so we need to spend some time going through it. Look, there are two ways you can go, right? You get a speech and you're thinking, I have no idea what this speech is saying. I don't know what this means. This language is not familiar to me. You're at like a fork in the road, and you either go one way, which is beat yourself up or feel bad or just stop altogether, to stop working and kind of give up, or you go the other direction, which is acknowledging that it's challenging and hard and new and makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable maybe, but that you begin to talk yourself out of the other choice, and you continue and you persist and you problem solve. So that is in part why I assigned this speech, in that it does cause you to pause and sit with it feeling challenging, but then begin to problem solve so that you can chunk it down and get through the speech. So I'm going to review a couple of different ways that you can problem solve reading through challenging or difficult text, as I think this text is. And then I'm also going to talk you through how to get started. Some of you may have been in a breakout room with me or a separate group on Tuesday, where I did talk through a lot of how to get started. And if you want to fast forward during that part, then please feel free to do so. So the first thing I'm going to sit with here, actually sit is in the title, but the first thing I'm going to look at here is the title. And immediately I noticed that we are working with a English language that is not of contemporary style. And I'm also noticing it's a question. And so it is, why sit ye here and die? Now, in that moment, you can either be like, I don't know what this is saying and I'm done. Or you can say, okay, this is weird and hard and different, but I'm going to break it down. And I'm thinking that the ye sounds a lot like you. And then what I like to do is, when I don't understand something, I'll put it into my own words and I'll kind of make it more contemporary. So I think this person, Mariah Stewart, is questioning with, why are you just going to sit here and die? Or why are you just going to sit here and not do anything? Why are you just going to lay down and die? And so that is a provocative question. I need to figure out, who is she questioning, and why did she decide to title her speech that way? Titles also give us more information about the writer's message, and that's one of the first things that you'll need to figure out before you even read. You can infer the speaker's message based on the title, and perhaps sometimes based on this little blurb at the beginning of the text, which is incredibly important to read. So I know right now that I'm going to take notes, because you'll have a chance to take notes as well. There's only 45 minutes, right? When we get the text, when we read it, when we decide how we're going to compose, and then when we actually write the essay. So I want to start thinking about how to use our time efficiently. You won't have time to make this really pretty outline and all these notes and annotating in different colors, but you can scribble out some notes in a rough form so that you can begin to collect your thoughts when you read. So immediately I know that I have to have, like, what's her situation, right? And I need to remember that situation is the occasion. Why is she giving the speech? To whom is she speaking? When? And then, so what? So these are kind of the questions, and like, this is rough. This is not anything that I made, to look pretty, but I'm asking myself of the situation. We call it the rhetorical situation. Why is she speaking? To whom? When? About what? And then, so what? And so we can get a lot of that situation information from this blurb up here. And as I said in class, we're learning that Mariah Stewart was a lecturer. She was the first known woman to give a political lecture in public. Huge. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, she's crossing gender boundaries. She's um, speaking at a time when women did not have equal rights, but she is a Black woman. And so she's speaking at a time when Black women, especially, were not considered to be academics or rhetoricians, right? So she is breaking a lot of social codes back then. And so it's 1832. This is super important. Where is she giving her speech? It is at the New England Anti-Slavery Society. And I also noticed that they call her, in addition to essayist and lecturer, an abolitionist. And so I know, let's see, if I don't know the word abolition or abolitionist, I'm looking at the main part of that word. The word inside the word is it sounds like abolish, to get rid of. So an abolitionist, I can figure out here, if she was speaking at an anti-slavery society, it is someone who is working to end slavery, anti-slavery. So I know a little bit more about her audience. Her audience, if they meet every month at an anti-slavery society, they're going to be people who do not want slavery to exist on some level. And I can't assume that the audience is all white or all Black, or, I can't really assume that. What I do know is that Mariah is part of the Black middle class in Boston. She was, and she the earliest Black middle class, and she is speaking at a society, so a formal gathering. And so I'm inferring that perhaps it is not just all Black or all white, but perhaps there are people there, maybe predominantly white, given 1832 in Boston, but that she is in front of maybe perhaps a diverse crowd as well. So immediately, I know I just learned about rhetorical question. And rhetorical question is not only to wake the audience up and to get the audience engaged, but it is to make the audience feel like they're in it with the speaker, like they're obligated in a way to do what the speaker is asking, or to think about what the speaker is bringing up in the topic. And she begins with this question. And so immediately, I just want to let my eye scan. Do I see more questions? And I'm just not even reading. Yes, I do. I see 3 more. So if I see 2 different rhetorical questions at 2 different places in the text, I have a body paragraph around the rhetorical device of rhetorical question, right? So immediately, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write, and I've already done it over here, right on my notes page, right? I'm going to write RD1, RD2, RD3, and something, again, it doesn't have to look like this, but it's like really, really rough. I don't know if you can see this right here. And it's just basically the letters, right? RD1, RD2, RD3. If you can't see it, my apologies. It's hard for me to make it work in here. Let's see, what side is this on? It's the opposite side. That's why it's right here. And then next to it, I just put 2 tick marks or 2 blanks, because I know that I need to find 2 examples. And so real quick, I'm just going to note that shall it be woman, just a few keywords for the quote next to RD1. And then I'm just going to note it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the 4th and 5th paragraph. So look, this isn't pretty. It's just a note for maybe where the quote is in the essay, and then maybe a few keywords from one of the quotes. That's the first paragraph, okay? So immediately then, I know I need to find 2 more rhetorical devices, but I kind of know that rhetorical question is super important because the title is a rhetorical question. She begins her essay that way. And I just did something because in my head I was like, well, wait a minute. If it's the title and she begins her essay that way, does she end her essay with a rhetorical question? And I just looked and she does. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. So guess what? That's going to make my analysis even better if I can say that she frames, right? She frames her essay with rhetorical questions. And I mean, like, I'm taking a moment. I'm looking here at this last paragraph and wow, I see a lot of rhetorical questions. And so I know from being in this class, and like you're thinking, I know that we've talked about how at the end of a speech, the writer will build urgency, right? You're finishing, you're building up to this conclusion where you want to leave your audience really thinking. So she is asking a lot of questions at the end and she's ending with it. So I'm also going to make a note, a lot at end. I'm going to put impact on audience. And then I'm going to put ends and begins with question. Again, I have super messy handwriting, but that's it. It's messy. Just some notes so that I could really begin my analysis. All right, so now comes the hard job of reading. And this is where I'm constantly working with inference. I'm inferring a lot about Mariah and Stewart, and I'm also inferring based on her title. So I'm putting together the situation that I know about her and the title. And the fact that she is an anti-slavery activist, right? So why sit you here and die? Why are you just gonna sit here and be done with it and roll over and be dead? If we say we will go to a foreign land, the famine and the pestilence are there, and there we shall die. If we sit here, we shall die. Come, let us plead our cause before the whites. If they save us alive, we shall live. And if they kill us, we shall but die. Okay, you're like, what does that even mean? So this is where you need to break it down. But if I'm taking the test, I know I don't have a ton of time. So what I'm going to do is a little trick where when I read, all right, it's one of these sentences that I read and I still don't know what it means, right? So what I'm going to do is pick out the key words that do stick out to me. Some of you may remember universal idea. It's fine if you want to go there. Some of you may just think key ideas, right? Key words. So she's speaking to a group where she is including herself with the audience. And she's basically saying, if we go someplace different, there are things there that are going to kill us. All right, including hunger. That's one of those things with famine, and we will die. If we sit here, though, we are going to die. So we're kind of stuck. That's what she's saying. We need to get together and fight our cause in front of white people. We need white people to hear us. Okay, that's what she's saying. Come, let us plead our cause before the whites. Now, this next sentence I highlighted because I asked the group that I was with earlier in class, I saw a rhetorical device and I said, hey, if I see a rhetorical device, I bet there is at least another rhetorical device in the same sentence. So we came up with 4 rhetorical devices in this blue sentence, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But in terms of chunking this for meaning, it's like, okay, if they save us, and they, I am assuming would be whites because the sentence before she brings up white people, right? If they, let's just put white people in there. If white people save us alive, we shall live. And if they kill us, we shall but die. That seems kind of obvious, right? So if we are alive and if the white people keep us alive, we will be alive. But if they don't, right, we're going to die. So there is a balance between life and death and at the hands of white people. And I'm also wondering, could dying be a metaphor? Could it be a real death and then also a symbol of another kind of death? Just because that sentence seems a little bit too obvious, right? Of course, if someone kills you, you will die. But maybe, and this is just me thinking out loud, you can disagree with me, but maybe there is a metaphor in that another kind of death. And so this is highlighted because I at first saw a syndeton because I saw this comma and this semicolon. Yes, there's an and, right? But I did see that there was enough that I could get by with a syndeton. But then someone else said juxtaposition, and I was like, oh yes, you're right, because the alive, right, and the death. And then someone else said parallelism or parallel structure, and I'm like, yes, oh my gosh, because you have the if they balanced with if they. And then what's interesting if you're talking about parallelism or parallel structure, you're always looking at what comes after the repeated phrase, right? What comes after that balance, and what comes after is a contradiction. If they save us alive, we'll live. If they kill us, we will die. And in a weird way, that does balance out because you have the beginning part that is the balance, and then what comes after the if they is the difference. And you're again comparing life and death. Okay, so you could even say it's parallelism with some juxtaposition in there. And there was another one, and right now it's escaping me, and someone will remind me what that is later. But repetition. So there's anytime you notice repetition, right? There's going to be something there. Yes, there's repetition, but see if you can push yourself to that extra level of, well, what is being repeated? Is it parallel structure out of that repetition? Is it juxtaposition out of that repetition, right? Syndeton. So right away, she is establishing this relationship between life and death and white people, okay? Right there in that first paragraph. In 1, 2, 3 sentences, she has delivered that problem, right? That problem. Methinks. So if you have read the way I teach Shakespeare, right? I don't understand every single word in Shakespeare, and that is my career. It is my job to teach English language arts. And I've thought a lot about Shakespeare, but I don't know all the words in Shakespeare. And so what I do is I just pick up, similar to like when I hear people, I've been around a lot of Spanish speakers in my life, and so I can pick up things in Spanish. I might not know exactly what it means, yet I can tell you kind of what people were talking about, right? Same thing. When I hear methinks, okay, I wouldn't use that. I can't say for sure, but I'm thinking it's just like I think, right? So I just want you to don't stress about having to know every single word. That is not the point. The point here, especially with text that is different or hard, is to just extract the big ideas, the key words, right? Extract what you can from the sentence and leave the rest. That's all. That's what we're going to do. That is a strategy. So I'm also going to replace, if she says methinks, I'm going to replace it with I think in my head, right? Replace it with the thing that makes sense to you. So I think I heard a spiritual interrogation. No idea what that, right? If you don't know it, like that's weird. But I will say that like I know that to interrogate someone means to question them aggressively. So maybe that's kind of what she's talking about. So with that word interrogation, I have the image of someone being almost like attacked with words, like picture like someone who's kept a prisoner by like the CIA, they get interrogated. So I heard a spiritual interrogation. Who shall go forward and take off the reproach that is cast upon the people of color? Shall it be a woman? And my heart made this reply, if it is thy will, be it even so, Lord Jesus. So she heard this question, almost like coming from God, spiritual. a spiritual question that like really got to her, really like an interrogator. Who is going to stand up and help alleviate the horrible problems of people of color? Shall it be a woman? It's almost like, oh, yes, it shall, right? That's what she hears. So that's what she's saying. And in her heart, if it is thy, okay, thy like theirs, right? If it is thy will, someone else's will, right? Maybe the will of the spirit, the spiritual interrogator, maybe the will of God, Lord Jesus. If it is, then let it be so. So right there, she's saying that she had this calling. She hears this message, and it's spiritual. It is for real, perhaps from God. She is a religious woman. I know this because she is invoking God in a religious way. And she is saying, I had a calling. I heard someone say that a woman shall rise up and stand before people and help take the weight that is cast upon people of color, help take that weight off. Okay, so that took us a long time to get through that, but I want you to know kind of what goes in my mind when I read currently. And when I first saw this speech, I was looking for a speech and I wanted a historic speech. I also wanted a speech where we could say, you know what, this is almost 200 years ago, and this person is making this plea with her audience, and how different is that from 200 years later, from right now? And that's on a separate issue. You don't have to write about that in your essay. We're not. We're looking at her rhetoric. However, I wanted something that is still relevant for you to think about at present day. So I'm just going to walk us through this next paragraph. I know that this is a longer video, so if you feel like you have enough, go about your business and go forth, as she would say. But I think the main point here is that if you're super stuck, right, you just want to, like I am when I'm around people who speak a different language, I'm not going to stress about not getting every single word, but if I can get like a word here and a word there, I can piece it together, right? Anyone can. You're not going to get everything, but you can get the main idea. So that's what I want you to think about that, right? It is just fine. It is perfectly good to just capture the main idea and don't stress yourself out about having to know every single word and how they go together. We don't speak like this. So that's not the point of this. The point is to get the imagery, those words like interrogation and spiritual interrogation, and to take those with you. One more reading strategy when you're chunking things. So you want to pay attention to the subject of the sentence, like the main idea of the sentence, the thing in that sentence that she is talking about. Sometimes it is that universal idea, that abstract noun. Sometimes it is just the subject of the sentence. And then you want to trace it afterwards and look for the verbs, right? And look for some of the things that she is doing or saying after that main part, that main noun, that main thing in the sentence. So here she is here. I have heard much respecting the horrors of slavery, but may heaven forbid that the generality of my color throughout these United States should experience any more of its horrors than to be a servant of servants or hewers of wood and drawers of water. Okay, you're like, wait a minute. I can't. What? No, you can. We got to flip it. So let's break it down. Let's problem solve. You're going to move through this. So the main noun, the main thing she's talking about would be the horrors of slavery, like the horrific things that are attached with the act of slavery. And she understands. She's like, I understand, right? I've heard a lot about this. But may heaven forbid, like heaven forbid, I assign you another homework assignment. Or, sometimes my mom would say, heaven forbid you do this again. Like, God help me if this happens again and I have to say this to you. So think of like when you've heard these phrases before. So it's like, God help me that the generality of my color throughout these United States. Okay, again, not sure where she's going with this, right? But I do hear that, and this word troubles me, I'm not going to worry about it, but that the color of her skin and how she is perceived in the United States, that maybe people like her, like people who are not white, God forbid, right? Heaven forbid they experience any more of its horrors. So what is the it? Let's trace it backwards. What is our thing that she's talking about? She's talking about slavery, right? So replace it with slavery. Any more of slavery's horrors than to be a servant of servants or hewers of wood and drawers of water. So she's explaining, like, if I don't know what these things are, so I'm thinking, all right, I am, people who look like her, right? So people who look like me, that's what she's saying, Mariah's saying. In this country, God forbid we should ever experience the horrors of slavery, right? Including being a servant of servants, not just a servant of servants, which is like, low. I don't know what hewers is, right? But I'm looking at hewers of wood and I'm looking at jars of water and I'm thinking of my head servant of servants in slavery. And I'm thinking, okay, people who maybe chop wood and get water. Even if I didn't want to spend that much time with hewers of wood and jars of water, I know that it's definitely a demeaning task because she says servant of servants. So one huge reading strategy. You go with your main thing, servant of servants, in your head, low, right? Anytime you have a comma afterwards, it's going to give you more detail of that main thing. It means like, similar, another addition to. And that's huge. So as long as you have one of those things, and if you're really struggling with the things that come after, then just stick with one. But that comma is going to signal things that are like it and tell us more description of that main thing. So yes, that took us a long time, but I need you to just try and get into the practice of doing this work and pick up what you know, and you're gonna get through this. So you have one rhetorical device, like if you go with rhetorical question, and now you just need two. And again, repetition is definitely going to be in here. We've seen up here, you could go with any of the parallel structure, parallelism, repetition, a synecton. Metaphor is going to be here, perhaps even analogy. So spend time with it. Think also, big picture. Try to get the big idea from each paragraph and then connect it back to her message. What does she want? What does she want? And how does she use these three devices to get what she wants? Now, questions about what you do with the chart. Do you do the chart? Do you not do the chart? I'm not grading the chart, but I will say this. If you do this chart, or at least if you're typing in your Google Doc and you have the chart open in another window and that chart guides you while you type, you're going to get a much higher score. And it's not because I'm like, oh, you have to use the chart. It's because this chart, if you do everything on this chart, you will get a perfect score. That's it. So whatever your brain needs to do what is being asked of you on the chart, these questions, if you answer them, you're going to get a perfect score in the body of the essay. So it's also going to help you craft your claims. So don't use it if you don't want to, but definitely refer back to it. I mean, don't write in if you don't want to, but definitely refer back to it. Same thing with the thesis. If you use this frame, you will have a perfect thesis. The thesis is 1 point. So if you're a strategist, you know that that's an easy point. You don't have to work for that point. If you go in and you have this formula memorized, you've just grabbed a point in your first 30 seconds. All you have to know would be the 3 devices and her purpose. Is it to argue? Is it to discuss? And then the message, what does she want? So please use the rhetorical flow for thesis. I advise you to use it for claims as well. Remember, if each body paragraph starts with that idea from the message, from what she wants, that universal idea plus rhetorical device, right? If you have both combined as the claim or topic sentence of each paragraph, you are going to have solid idea-based paragraphs. But they're really going to look for those very clear claims. Okay. We are going to talk more about the introduction, the conclusion, and embedding quotes in class. I just kind of wanted to go through the reading part, and the reading part on this is hard, right? Okay, please text me or message me if you have questions. We can do this. You have it in you to do it. We're just going to practice resilience and tenacity and getting through academic challenges, and you can do it.